daughter of Pat and Ed White, who you saw in the movie, Bonnie Bear. And finally, two boys who about 50 years ago watched their dad become the first man on the moon, Rick and Margaret.
Damien, congratulations everybody, really. Thank you so much for coming. It really is amazing to have you all here. I'd like to ask you, Damien, I see as a through line in your work a bit of a theme of the cost of our dreams. And I think that really resonated here for me, not just the cost to Neil Armstrong personally, but to his family and to society as a whole. Can you talk a little bit about the perspective that you took with telling this story in maybe a bit of an unexpected way?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways that was what interested me the most in it, was trying to, take an event that's so famous, it's almost mythological, the Apollo 11 landing on the moon, and then try to peel back the mythology and look at what actually happened at a practical level, at a human level, what went into that event. And I think one thing that I really found so kind of profoundly communicated in Jim Hanson's book right away, and that Josh kind of found more and more of in his research, was just over and over again examples of how hard this was. And it seems like it goes without saying, but I actually think with an event that's so gilded and in sometimes nostalgia and sort of success story aura as the moon landing, it's actually easy today to forget how insane it seemed at times, how unlikely, the lives it cost, the money, the families it put burdens on. It was just this insane ordeal that I think we still haven't fully fathomed in some way as a world. So I think that was the impulse for all of us, was really just try, through the research and through telling the story, to try to get at the grit of that and show, not sugarcoat it, show really every step of the way through Neil's eyes and Janet's eyes how hard it was.
It's such an epic event and an epic story that you're telling, but it's done in such an intimate, beautiful way. I'm wondering if I can ask of the cast both how you achieved that, both on the family side of things and then also on the professional side of things with the astronauts. Achieving intimacy.
Go. I'll do family, because I'm not an astronaut in the film. Davey did this amazing thing where we had 2 weeks before we started proper principal photography, where we had all the costumes and all the sets to ourselves, and him and Linus, who's the DOP, the amazing DOP, and Ryan and me and the kids just sort of lived together for a bit. Not all day, every day. That would have been too much. But we sort of became a family, just from starting. All day we just spent with the kids, just sort of trying to entertain them and get to know them. And then so when we came to the first day of shooting, it felt like we'd known each other for such a long time, and I think that was invaluable, really. And so we never really had to have those chats that you'd have, which was where you didn't really know, because we'd lived it really a bit, which really helped. Astronauts.
He's an astronaut.
Oh my God.
Maybe the real astronauts want to talk about intimacy. Everything was handheld, and Linus was, I feel like, as much a part of the cast as anybody, and you really felt from the first day that I was on set that there was something different. I almost felt like I was in an Alden movie my first day, because there was this day where it was the funeral for Elliot C, and there was a part of the funeral happening in one room. You guys were in there, and there was another part happening out in the day room, and it was all happening simultaneously. It was almost like a documentary. It was really, I think everybody, as soon as they showed up on set, realized this was different.
I'm wondering, Damien, if you can speak a little bit about some of the craft in the film. The sound design is incredible to hear when you're watching the film. It feels, you know, there's such a stark contrast between the loud noises of the rocket and also the silence of the moon landing. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you tried to create that authenticity.
Well, I mean, I was, you know, insanely lucky to have the collaborators that I did. I mean, when it came to sound, I worked with two people who I'd worked with before in La La Land, Eileen Lee and Millie Yantru Morgan, and then two people I hadn't worked with before, John Taylor and Frank Montano, and they, all four of them just, you know, in a way this was sort of an example, you know, that was kind of repeated across departments, you know, right from the get-go. They went to the Cape to record Falcon X launches and record, you know, sort of immediate sounds of any launches that they could get their hands on, as well as trying to pour over the archival of Saturn V launches and Titan launches. They sort of got access to all the actual spacesuits that the astronauts in the film played, from X-15 suits to Gemini suits to the suit that John Young, not Neil, but John Young wore on the moon, and sort of put mics in the helmets and got sounds from every single valve and piece of the suit. And they were doing all of that while we were actually shooting and still cutting the movie. And then the mix was its own kind of sort of process of discovery, trying to sort of find out where to lean into that realism and then where to veer away from it. So, you know, your average launch here has, you know, I'd say like a good contingent of it is real sounds that you hear from the rocket, but then you also want to try to get that emotional gut punch and add to that and augment that.
Tell them about the horses.
So that, you know, so you throw in, I found horses can be quite helpful. The sound of stampeding horses is very useful. Lions roaring. I think there's a hippopotamus in there somewhere. There's a whole menagerie. So, you know, rocket launches and zoos are really the real key, sound-wise.
I'm curious, Al Warden, if you don't mind taking a question. You've been to the moon, and that's incredible. I'm wondering what this experience of watching this film is like for you, and, you know, did he get it right?
I think Josh did a wonderful job of writing the script for this book that my friend Jim wrote. But you see, I see there's a huge thing of transferring a book to a movie. I think in a book you can say somebody does certain action, but when you do the movie, you got to show what that action is, and you got to show how they're going to get along the way. So anyway, hopefully it was a little help. I think it's a fabulous movie. I have watched lots and lots of science fiction movies, and I don't like any of them because there's always a falsehood in every single science fiction movie, and particularly those science fiction movies that pretend to be real space kind of movies, like Gravity, which is probably the worst movie I've ever seen. So it's not only great, but it's very refreshing that we have a movie here that focuses on the people involved, the man involved, and what he did. And then it goes on by saying that, you know, there's just one wish. See, I relate more to space cowboys than I do to these people. If anybody has seen the movie, that's where they take 80-year-old astronauts and fly them into space again, and I'm all set to go.
I'm wondering if, Ryan, you could maybe talk a little bit about what it was like to... You gotta let me get one in. If you could talk a bit about what it was like to work with Rick and Mark and anybody else that you kind of spoke to help prepare for this role.
I can't follow that.